Hi, and welcome to Pick Stitches. My name is Sarah, and I will be talking you through the Simplicity 8736 pattern today. This is a vintage 1940s pattern from Simplicity. It's really fun. I've now made it twice, and I really love the silhouette and how it fits. Overall, this pattern we're going to be making view D, which is over here. This pattern features a drop sleeve, and you will need to cut the front and back separate. The front and back for D is different than a lot the other views, so make sure you're cutting the correct view when you cut this one out. It also features a collar and a bow tie. The back of this pattern has buttons that go down the back, and the collar kind of meets in the middle. Overall, this pattern was really fun to make. I do, in this pattern, do some pattern hacking. I'll explain a little bit about what I'm doing. I did mess up my collar when I did pattern hacking, and I'll try to explain as I'm going through that what you can do to not have that happen for you, since I've made it a few times now and I kind of know my errors, but I'll still make them in this video, so that's fun. Otherwise, this pattern only takes, it takes less than 2 yards of fabric, depending on your size, and overall it is really fun and pretty easy to do. The sleeves go on really fun. There are a lot of darts, but otherwise, yeah, let's get into it.
So here what we have is, I have already made a mock-up of my initial kind of pattern hack where I lowered the collar. If you want to see that, it's on my Instagram account. But here, what I've kind of realized is that I've made the collar too wide, and needs to go in about 1 inch to 1.5 inches on each side in order to fit well, which is why we always make mock-ups. All right, so we're about to update my draft. So I know I've made that collar 2 inches too wide, so you're going to see me take the collar in about 1 inch on each side and then redraw the neckline based off of the shirt. Then we're going to make our facing. So the way to make a facing is you literally just trace the neckline and make it the size that you need it. Again, I'm going to take the back in about 1 inch and trace my facing again. Just note you need your facing to go to the dart line and stop there. All right, so I'm going to talk you through now how to not mess up your collar. You can see here that we need to make our back facing, just like I just showed, and we're going to use that to make our collar. However, we're going to need to extend the back facing about 1 inch from where we drew it along the dart line. So there's actually a notch on your pattern, and that is how far out you should extend your facing when you're taping it together to make your collar, which I'll show in this next step. So just note, you can make your collar exactly the same as I show, but you will need to extend the back facing out 1 inch in order to make that collar fit properly, and it'll need to go to the notch that I've pointed out here on the pattern. Next, you can tape your facing together, trace the inside collar line, and then mimic the shape of the old collar and kind of cut that out to the best of your ability. I used a French curve for this. It was very helpful. And after that, you're done pattern hacking, and you can move on to sewing your shirt.
Good morning. So we are about to cut out our fabric. So I just need to finish ironing over here, and then we will cut out all of our pieces and interface them and get sewing on this project. Okay, so my pattern, I am going to be doing view D here, and then I think I have enough to cut it in the way it specifies down here, which is just selvage to selvage. So all I'm going to do is just cut this diagram down here out. So if you're new to pattern making, what they're going to do is just tell you how to arrange your pattern in the most efficient way. You can do it other ways depending on what type of fabrics and how much fabric you have. But I don't have nap on this fabric, so I can just cut it in the way they show here. Our interfacing. So on this piece here, we'll need to cut out the pieces and lists for our interfacing as well. Okay, this is about what we have layout wise. My collar is going to be duplicated twice here, and then my shirt's on that side, front of the shirt. My back is down here, and then my shoulder and one other piece are going to be down there.
All I need to do now is cut out my pattern pieces. I'm going to clip my notches and mark all of my dots and darts on this pattern, which there are a lot. I like to just kind of put pins through my darts and then mark them through the paper, and then kind of draw them out with a ruler after I mark them. Once you've cut out all your pattern pieces, just make sure you cut out your interfacing as well and get that all ready to go. Next, we'll just need to interface both of our collar and our facing for the shirt. My steamer is broken on my iron, so I just use like a little spray water bottle and kind of wet the area. If you have fabric you're really worried about, you could also put pressing cloth in between your iron and your interfacing. I'm kind of lazy and don't do that.
Next, all I'll need to do is gather the sleeves for the front of the shirt. So just gather them, kind of make sure they're about the size as the back, and do that on both sides. I like to run 2 lines of gathering. That seems to work pretty well for me. I'm also going to start sewing my darts. So I just pin through the dots that I made and then kind of pin through the lines and make sure they're all lined up. There are like 10 or 12 darts on the shirt, so you're going to be doing this for a long time, so just kind of buckle in and get going on it. You want to make sure that you press your darts towards the center of the shirt, so they're always kind of going towards the center.
And now enjoy a few minutes of sewing additional darts on the shirt. Next, to prep our shirt, we're going to iron on our fusible interfacing to the inside of the back of the shirt. Next, we line up our non-interfaced and interfaced collar cutouts and pin them together, matching the dots up and the edges up. And we can just sew around that outside edge, making sure we're kind of trying to keep that curve as smooth as we can. and you can see I ran out of bobbin here, so I'm gonna have to reset that last bit again. Next, we're gonna trim our edges of the collar and make little notches and clips to make sure that that curve turns in really easily. I would actually do more than I show I'm doing here. I would cut quite a lot of them to make sure that that curve is really smooth, especially around the really curvy bits. Then you can just kind of push those corners out and press it flat, and you should have your collars. Next, you can baste these two collars together so that all the layers are kind of sandwiched, and then you can baste them together right at the middle and put a little reinforcing stitch there if you need to as well. Next up, we need to pin our gathered sleeve to the back of the shirt. We're going to do that on both sides of the garment, and then we're going to sew that down and finish that top edge using a serger. Next, pin the sides of your shirt together with the right sides facing together and sew your seam. You'll want to finish this edge with a serger as well.
Okay, so I haven't sewn the collar on yet, but I'm just looking at it with the shirt. And one thing I'm kind of worried about is, it might be hard to see, is that I kind of interface this on one side, and I'm pretty sure the non-interface side is supposed to be the top, but you can see through it, and also my edges are just really wobbly and not very circular. So I think this side looks a little better in terms of just like you can't see the stitched edge there, but it's still pretty wobbly. So I think I might just take the night and sleep on it, and I might cut my collar again. And I just got a book on hand sewing by Bernadette Banner, so we might try doing this again, but hand sewing it and seeing if it turns out okay. Okay, so I recut my collar out, and what I'm planning to do is either hand sew or machine stitch, but instead I've kind of drawn a line around where the seam should go. So if I machine stitch, I should be able to be a little bit more precise so that I get a really nice smooth curve. And if I decide to hand sew, then I have a marking to follow. I'm gonna do that. I need to cut one more set of these, and then the other. Alright, so I did a couple things off camera just because it was easier, but I redid my collar. So this is my old collar. It is kind of lifeless and flat compared to my new collar. But I ended up hand sewing the seam, one just for practice, and two because I was having just a lot of trouble getting this curve right. And so I figured if I hand sewed it, it would look really nice. And honestly, it does. It is a lot smoother than my other collar's curve. I'm gonna try to put this up here for reference, but you can kind of see how like bumpy that is, and also how flat this is. Which is just because I was using fusible interfacing, so there wasn't a lot of bulk to it. And I didn't like how kind of flat and lifeless this side was, and I also didn't like seeing the seams on the other side. So instead, I lined this with a linen, which you can see there. And so I just lined it with a linen and hand sewed it. So now my stitches, my seams are on the inside. And honestly, this has such like a nice thickness to it that the other color didn't have. So if you're making this and you're considering interfacing versus lining it, I would recommend lining it. A linen weight, or honestly, I like a thick cotton would probably work. This is like a pretty nice, like weighted linen. Gives it some heft, especially because my fabric is so thin that it kind of needs that on it. Like, look how nice that looks.
Now that we're done with the collar, we can work on the facing. First thing you need to do is sew the front and back facings together at the seams, matching up the notches. Once we've pressed our facing, we can start pinning our collar to the blouse. You'll want to pin the collar matching up the dots. If you've made your collar the correct size, your collar will go all the way to the notch on the back of the blouse. After the collar is pinned and secured, you're going to baste it in place so that you can attach your facing. Then need to turn in 1/8 of an inch on the back panel, and you're going to sew that folded edge to your facing to kind of help make this like back fold over facing thing. You'll see. Now you're going to fold over the facing of the back panel and match up the dart to the facing edge so that they line up, and you'll have like a little back flap area.
So I have pinned my collar to my facing, but I want to go over this side here because it's a little tricky. I'm going to show you what it looks like pinned and then kind of what you need to do. So you pin your collar's basted, and then you have your facing on top. So we just sewed this bit down, and we stitched the edge of our interfacing here down. And so what I want to do next is pin the collar. And so your interfacing side, there's like this little extension where your dart is and where your interfacing is. And so I'm just going to fold where the interfacing kind of stops at. Mine's not perfectly exactly lined up, but it's pretty close to that fold line there. And then I'm going to line the seam up here to my dart on this side. And so seam line and dart line up. And then, it should just like kind of fit really naturally together. And you can line up your shoulder seams using the dots. And then I just marked my center front as well on this piece so that I could line up my center front really easily. So you can see my like 2 little collars under here.
Now the moment of truth. We get to sew this bad boy together. So 5/8 of an inch all the way around your collar edge. Make sure that your edges are flat, and try to keep that as curvy and as you can as you're sewing around those edges. And don't forget to backstitch. Going about 1/8 of an inch away from our seam line, we're going to understitch the facing. After we do that, we're going to stitch down the facing at the shoulder seam. Next up is the sleeves. So we're going to do a kind of rolled hem here. So I'm going to press in my bottom edge 5/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to kind of tuck it in and just make a really nice little 3/8 of an inch-ish hem. Then I can sew the shoulder seams together. Press everything flat, And if your pattern is like mine and your sleeves don't match up, you can just cut and grade them so that the sleeve connection is the same length. I don't know why they're different lengths, but mine were. But it's fine, you know? To finish our sleeve, we just want to sew down that rolled hem. I think I'm sewing around 1/4 of an inch here, just kind of following where the kind of how I feel the edge of the fabric on the other side. Then we can pin our sleeve to the blouse, right sides together, matching up the 3 dots on the top of the sleeve to the dots on our blouse. Then all we need to do is sew our sleeve to the blouse. The sleeve was actually pretty easy to sew to this blouse. It didn't need a lot of like stretching or I like put in a basting line and I didn't even need it. So honestly it fit really nicely as is. And this is pretty much how I finish all the seams on this garment is I just run them through my serger. To run your sleeve through your serger, you just kind of pick an area, usually in the armpit, and then just kind of run it around with the serger and then just go over the area you just started with and it won't come undone.
Hello. So we have just a couple things left on the shirt at this point. It's back here. The sleeves are done. The top is all done, and all I need to do now is the bottom hem and the buttonholes in the back, and I need to make the bow for the the little bow tie that's gonna go right in the middle there, and that's really it. And tomorrow is Saturday, so I should be able to get pretty much all of those things done.
Alright, enough of that. You don't need to hear all of this. All you have to do is fold that back flap down, sew it down, and then we'll trim it here in a second.
Actually, all I'm gonna do is cut my flap off. Actually, I'm just gonna do a couple snips. I'm gonna cut like right about here first, and I'm just gonna cut, which is like maybe just a little bit down from the edge there, and then I'm gonna cut this off entirely. Gone. And then I'm gonna come and take the rest of this off too. And the reason I did it that way is because I'm gonna flip this. So I'm gonna flip this inside out, and I'm gonna press that, and then what I want is to be able to roll my seam, my hem. So it's a 5/8 hem, so I'm just gonna press that down first, and then do the same thing we did for the sleeves, which is like turn it in a little bit. And so I need a little bit of fabric on the inside of this to start, with, and then I can do the rest of it pretty easily. So I'm going to do that on both sides, and then I'm just going to press my hem probably off camera and sew it, and it's exactly the same as the cuffs, the sleeve cuffs that I already showed. So just repeat that process again.
So last few steps here, we need to make our bow. I'm going to sew the edges of the bow all around the edges and leave a hole kind of in the middle that I can pull the bow through, pull the strings through. You can see here I've already kind of flipped this inside out, and now I have that hole, and what I'm going to need to do is hand sew that hole closed So I'm getting better at hand sewing, so you just kind of do what I believe is a whip stitch to close this hole up, and then you will have a bowstring.
Okay, so last step, which I'll always avoid, buttons. So we've got our, and I need to hand tack the bow on if I'm going to do that. But really all that's left is just taking this back panel and marking my buttonholes on it and sewing that down, sewing those on, and then hand sewing the buttons, which when I hand sew the buttons, I'll if I'm gonna tack the bow on, I'll tack the bow on. I can't really decide if I want the bow or not. I kind of like it, but I also kind of like the shirt without it, so I think it can kind of really go either way. It's kind of a cute addition, but it does make it a little bit more, it might make it harder to layer with other things too. But you know, it's kind of cute, so we'll see. Super exciting, and I'm really excited to wear this. It looks really nice on, and I think I'm kind of sad that people don't make shirts in this style anymore, because the silhouette is just very nice where it's tapered at the stomach, like to your waist, so you kind of have this like billowy figure, and then it comes in at the waistline, so it gives you like a very nice shape, which you probably wouldn't think it would because it's a little tighter at the mid-waist, but it's very nice. And I didn't make this super loose, so it's I gave myself like a little bit more wiggle room because I wasn't sure how tight I wanted the bottom. I might, if I make this shirt again, cut a 16 instead of an 18, because I think I want it a little tighter than what this ended up being, and that's perfectly fine. I think I think all of my pattern pieces I can adapt really easily to a 16. I might just have to retrace them if I want the lower collar. But it worked out really well, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm going to begrudgingly get out my other sewing machine that has my buttonhole holder on it and do that.
My shiny little buttons and my button holder. And first I'm going to do a little test piece of fabric just to make sure everything goes well. It does, so I'm going to move on to my shirt. Always test your button holder, guys. It's rough out here. I'll go through doing all of these, and then all of them went really well until I got to the one where the collar was. And I had to pick this buttonhole out 2 times before I got it to work. And what was happening with the collar was getting stuck on my machine, and my buttonhole really only doesn't like it when there's not enough fabric in the back, so I needed to do my buttonhole in this way. And what I ended up doing was taking a piece of fabric and putting it under the, like pinning it, basically pinning this piece of cotton to the back of my fabric, and then doing my buttonhole and then cutting out around it, kind of like you do when you do like embroidery. And that worked really, really well. So if you have trouble, try that. You can't see the cotton from the inside. It's fine. It looks great. And here is our final look. Again, I really love the silhouette of the shirt on. It's a little loose on me, and when I did make it a size smaller, it's a little tighter, a little more fitted. But honestly, I love how flowy this blouse is, and I wear it all of the time. Literally all of the time. Also, I should have pressed this shirt before I did this photo shoot, but did I? No. Do I regret it? No, it's fine. It looks great. It's a great blouse. I loved making the drop color for it, and I will probably make this shirt so many more times again. And that is our episode. If you don't mind, like and subscribe for all of our future videos here on Picked Stitches.